to order. We are expecting a few more folks, but we do have a quorum. And first order of business is to, just before I move on, I don't see any members of the public other than agency folks. Have I missed anybody? Speak up, please. Everybody at once. It doesn't look that way. Okay, so no members of the public are present. So then the first order of business is approval of the minutes of March 10. Can we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
That's Al.
I'll second.
And who was the second, please?
Liz.
Liz, thank you. Any corrections, additions, deletions? If not, all in favor? Aye.
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 Abstain.
One abstention, Ben. Okay, with that, we can move on to the DCP report of complaints and inspections. Pamela or Janita, I'm not sure who's going to kick off.
Janita will.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to go first. On the report, the Excel spreadsheet that I ran from March 1st of 2023 through May 31st of 2023, there are 2 files that are closed. We had not received a new complaint in that time frame. The complaint that you see for 2021-145, the complaint center inadvertently assigned it to a real estate examiner when it was also had been assigned to the occupational professional side, where I had already assigned it to investigator Lombardi. So they closed the file as no jurisdiction upstairs in the real estate division. However, I removed the complainant's name because it's not technically closed. Keith did do the investigation and an inspection for me with regards to that particular park. And I did forward his report to Cynthia Fernandez up in legal for review and further administrative action. So that's why there's no complainant name. Normally you would get the complainant name if it was closed. However, this was an error entry. Real estate closed it. We had already been doing our part, and it's up in legal for further action. Okay.
Just one question about this. I understand it's a bit of a one-off, but did you previously open a case when you realized it was in the wrong place?
The complaint center enters them, and then it's sent to the real estate queue, and then it's sent to my occupation professional. They had already entered it properly once after they realized that it had been entered incorrectly. However, it was never closed when it was sent to real estate incorrectly. So real estate closed it, but I have a file number different from this. Keith investigated it. We did an inspection there, and the report is properly entered and upstairs with Cynthia for review.
Okay, because I just don't recollect. Did we see this in an open case report in a prior quarter?
No, I don't believe so. This
Okay.
particular one,
Yeah.
no, because it was in the real estate queue, and they reassigned it down to us and made it a duplicate, so we closed it. So
Okay.
it got closed.
All right,
So,
thank you.
okay. The other one, for 2022-291, Investigator Lombardi investigated it, did an inspection, worked with the park to get them to resolve the issue, and they installed new locking mailboxes. The complainant was very happy, and I had Investigator Lombardi put the file packet together, and I forwarded it to you, to the DCP Commission's board, so you should have that copy of that entire file, because we closed it in investigations.
Right, yep, we did get that file.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Anything further?
We're, as far as for complaints and inspections with regards to that, no. Pamela might have some updates on some of the stuff we're doing.
Yeah, so we are trying to reconcile our inactive lapsed parks. So that's a project that we have taken on. I've been working with Rafi. He has made a couple of requests for rosters, and some have fallen off. But we've found that at least one park has been sold, so we have a rename. But we're basically reconciling the ones that lapsed last year or this year, actually, so the numbers can go up, because we've seen consistently 199 parks, and when we ran the report, it was 186. So we are reconciling. He's out doing that. We have another investigator, Jesus Ijescas, who's taking care of those, so that we can get the parks back online, if you will.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. Question about that, Pam. I think around the time you came, the department had discovered, I think because of that unlicensed park with the falling trees, that they'd lost track of over the years, a whole bunch of parks, and that there was a real problem with trying to figure out if a park has changed name and even street address, if it's the same park as one that had been licensed. And we had some conversation back then, I recall, about changing your data system to include additional addresses beyond that of the person who holds the license. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, it does. It does. And the report that I see Rafi just joined us has parks. We have addresses, the number of spaces. So I think I need to fine tune that. There is a way for us to track that, because yes, the problem is, as you're mentioning it, is by credential holder and not by address. So when cases like I was just mentioning, where someone purchases a park, the original license says lapsed, but then there's someone else has applied, or another entity has applied for a license to take over that, to acquire that park. And so, yes, I do agree that maybe registration is great by, or credentialing by location. But right now I have this report that I discovered that's been there all along through our IT department. So I've been utilizing that. That's what we're using as a tool.
Yeah, I would recommend, if you can make some permanent changes in the database, getting the address will be critical. Although, Nancy and I, around that same time, several years ago now, did an exhaustive crosswalk of all the listings, and did investigations of various sort to try to pin down the identity. And we discovered that not only did we have a different location from what the department was showing, because you were carrying the licensee and not the park location, but even within the location of the park, sometimes streets get renamed. And so
Yes,
if you have a way of capturing whatever the current street address is, but also something else distinctive about the location of the park, even if it's, yeah, I don't know what it would be, but just keep that in mind.
I will. I'll make a note of it. But yes, I do. I agree with you 100%. It would be easier for us as the inspectors who are out. And, I've had a situation myself trying to find a location, and the street name did change. Yes.
And while we have you, can you give us an update on routine inspections, whether you're where you are in your cycle?
We have Keith Lombardi and Jesus Ijeskis out. They're both reporting to Janita. They have a list. As you know, now we are able to inspect the parks over the course of the year instead of doing them at the renewal time, which has lifted a great burden off of us because we'd have to pull in people from different units. I myself was out doing them just so that we can make sure that we're in compliance with the law, getting these inspected before we issue the new credential. So we have, and I will say Janita has divided the territory amongst the two inspectors to get this done. So from what I know, we are on target, but then right now our focus is to reconcile the parks that have fallen off the list. So that is what we're focusing on now. They started at the beginning of the month. I would tell you that there were 12 on the list.
Yeah, I don't want to volunteer somebody else, but I suspect that Nancy and perhaps some of the park owners might be of assistance if you run into difficulties pinning things down.
Oh, we appreciate that. Thank you. But we do find, I believe there's one which potentially is maybe going into a subdivision. I'm waiting to get results on that, so I don't know if that's a new trend. I know there's Park in Orange that was sold off, or maybe for commercial development. So this could be what's going on, but we'll know better once the investigators get us the report.
Sorry, you said there was a park in Orange that was sold for other use?
I believe that is on the Boston Post Road, they were down to, like, as the owners, I believe, passed away, or, if they had certain rights. And I know Rafi may be able to speak if he's there on that. He has his hands up. Yes, there was one that was supposed to be sold for commercial use. The the mobile homes were being removed.
Do you know how many units there were in the park?
Let me see, I believe there were just like 4 left, but I would have to look at the credential to see.
Yeah. The last time I was over there, they had like maybe 4 to 6 homes there, and only one of them was an actual tenant. Since then, the whole property's been dismantled, and they're building some kind of medical building over there now.
Wow.
Yep, that was something that by the time I found out about it and went down there and actually spoke with the one resident who was willing to talk. This is a couple of years ago. There were 5 or 6 homes. Only one was resident occupied. All the rest had been in one way or another removed. And as near as I could find out, without any aid that was due under state law. And the one person that I spoke to had taken the park owner to court when they raised their rent over $1,000. They managed to win, and I told them we would try to help them. And then they discontinued contact. Their home is now gone. Al's probably got more current information, but that construction had not begun the last time I was there. So that's it's kind of water over the dam. The system failed somehow on that particular issue.
Yeah, the entire steel framework is up for that building already.
Yeah,
Devin,
the town of Orange was not, wanted the place gone, is my understanding. I guess they had issues with it over the years, and residents were getting no support from local government, and so it's gone.
Yeah. Rafi, did you want to say something? And welcome,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah, no, I do. I guess maybe this is a question for Pamela, or maybe it's just a comment. I'm not sure. But the park closing statute is within the Mobile Home Park Act, and so it's within DCP jurisdiction. And it seems to me that if, by whatever means, DCP learns that a park is closing, I mean, other people may not know that. It's really important that the department make sure that the park closing law is being enforced, because it's a violation of the act for the park owner not to comply with 21-70F. And so I'm just hoping that, Pamela, and you're reporting this, I hope that the department sort of thinks about how it can go about doing something to make sure that everyone knows, that the residents know that the law is enforced, that the park owner doesn't ignore the law. And it's important for that to happen early in the process, because one way of evading the statute is to devise ways to get people to leave voluntarily during the period. And then when you get the park cleared, there's no one left that's entitled to the benefits under the statute, because they're all gone. And it's a way in the apartment building context where a landlord tries to get around the Relocation Assistance Act by simply pushing people out, using various means to push people out. So by the time it comes into play, there's nobody left. And then you don't have to give anybody relocation assistance, but you do. The fact is, under the law, those apartment owners would be in violation of the State Relocation Assistance Act. So I guess my suggestion or my request is that the department should give some thought to how it deals with the situation when it learns of a park that's being closed, but there has been no compliance with the statute.
That was a situation over there in Orange, because I went out to talk to the guy, years ago. He's the only one left that was an owner. There was a couple of renters in there, and he didn't know what to do. So I gave him the information to get in touch with the DCP and told him about all the benefits stuff he could possibly get for if that place closed, the whole 9 yards. He said he got in touch with them and he was going to make some kind of contact with somebody. And then as time went by, I kept on checking to see if he was home there. And after a certain point in time, his home was gone. So I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he succeeded in talking to DCP or he got left by the wayside. I don't know.
I don't think they ever contacted DCP. I gave them the same information, Al. They pursued it through the courts and won one round. But the park owner had apparently succeeded over the years, giving the owners that did own issue units there a small amount of money. And I don't know how the other ones were disposed of, but some of them were owned by the park owner. So they were just told they had to leave. But I don't think he ever contacted DCP.
Yeah. I guess part of my point was kind of a proactive point. I understand if DCP gets no complaints, it doesn't necessarily know it's a problem. And so it can't enforce it in the absence of somebody telling it. But I think, to me, the DCP's interest is separate from the interest of the residents. That's to say, the residents obviously benefit from the law being enforced. But DCP is itself harmed when people violate the law. And so for example, when DCP does annual inspections, it's really doing the enforcement on its own authority, not because somebody complained. And this, to me, should fall into the same category. If the information comes to DCP's attention, even though nobody's made a complaint, that DCP has a supervisory interest in making sure that people don't evade the statute that it's responsible for enforcing. And so DCP should have a system in place by which it would address the issue if it should happen, even if there's no complaint pending from anybody. So I guess to me, that's no different than other things that would happen if DCP discovers violations of the act that nobody has complained about. It still tells the park owner. They have to, they have to fix the roads in the park, even if no tenant has ever complained about the roads, because they're discovering it when they do an inspection. So my point is, it's unfortunate for the individual residents that they didn't make a complaint, but once DCP knows about it, again, I'm encouraging DCP initiate action in whatever is an appropriate manner.
Yeah, I would add to that, Pamela, and also, I guess, Ryan, certainly would request that the council be notified immediately if DCP gets any word of a potential closing. Whether the park owner's in compliance with the statute or not. We've always had a serious interest, to put it mildly, in these situations, and in fact have been involved, I think, in all of them that have happened in one way or another. So it is a very big deal for the mobile home community writ large, statewide, when something like this occurs. So I would ask that the department do both what Reiki said, which is, make sure that the residents have gotten the legally required notice, but also notify the council so that we can monitor the situation. These are complex cases, and all the more so given the CHFA park purchase program and the requirements of the statute for residents to act in a timely manner to exercise their rights if they want to purchase the park. So, can we get pause for a second and let the department respond?
Sure.
Sure, and I did speak with Reiki. We did have a conversation, so I totally agree that more information needs to be out there, especially the Relocation Assistance Act. Perhaps we could put that on. There's better information that we could share on our website. However, what we are seeing, and I would tell you, is mostly acquisitions and not closings. That is kind of a rare occurrence, but if we do have one, yes, we would write that up and refer it up to our legal department. I say up because they're on the 9th floor and we're on the 8th floor, but we refer that to over to legal. There's things that I have on my list of to do in the areas of mobile home parks. Perhaps mass emailing the owners to let them know what their responsibilities are. That could be, of course, I would have to clear that through the department to get something sent out as far as their responsibilities, not just for if they're closed, but just their duties to the tenant and under the statute, what they're required to comply with. But I do agree that there's more information that we could share. And if with you at the council, if we do find that the parks have closed, so long as that is not an open investigation, that's where we're limited, but we can bring back whatever it is. And I appreciate any assistance. I know
It's
that
not
Reiki has
necessary. It's
offered.
unnecessary. It's unnecessary for you to tell us that there's an investigation. We just need to know that there's a closure in process or potential closure. That's all we need to know. That could be perfectly legal and no complaint would ever be filed. But that goes beyond, I think, your protection of the confidentiality of the complaint issue. It's different. It's separate, right?
Yeah, and if I could just, I'll just echo what Pam said. Yeah, certainly whatever we can share, we'll certainly be willing to do so. And as far as getting the information out, not only on Mobile Hope, but obviously with the end of session, there's a lot of new legislation. As Member Cascaway knows, there was a large rewrite of the real estate laws. So we're going to be doing a lot of public education over the next several months, and Mobile Hopes will certainly be a part of that. So what I would propose is give us some time to put that public education together and outreach, and then if there's additional outreach that's needed, we can probably pick that up at our next meeting if you think that what's been done so far is inadequate.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad you're here because in a moment or two, we'll hear about the new right of first refusal statute, which extends beyond the park closure to give residents the right to purchase their home. And so I think everyone needs to be made aware of that as well. So it's timely, quite timely.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. I think we're obviously going through and trying to figure out both what audiences need to hear what information and what's the best way to convey it. So I don't know that we're going to have a lot of answers, but certainly happy to hear the questions.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to share a draft with us before you send it out. We may have some suggestions for you, both as to content and audience.
Yeah, I would certainly, if you have thoughts ahead of time, please feel free to forward up. I know just given both the FOI considerations and also kind of the need to get this information out quickly, I don't know if sharing the drafts to the board, because in order to do that, we'd have to notice a special meeting to get kind of joint comments back, but certainly would be happy to hear any input you'd have or anything that you are concerned about before drafting.
I'm quite surprised to hear that. That's never occurred in the 40 years I've been here, that you've had to call a special meeting to share information with us. We share drafts with you all the time.
No. So let me be clear. I'm happy. I can certainly share information out to the board, but in order to get kind of joint feedback, like one-on-one conversations are fine.
Okay.
But if I sent information to the board and the board wanted to like have input back as a collective, they couldn't do that over email. That would have to be a special meeting.
Understood. So why don't you, for the moment, say that you feel free to communicate with me directly, and we'll keep it out of FOIA for the moment.
Certainly I'll have to work through our communications director on that, but happy to include you in those communications.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I don't want to cut this short, but we do have guests from CHFA patiently waiting.
All right, Bennett.
Dave, go ahead.
Dave.
Finish. You started, so finish.
While DCP is still here, I was a little bit confused by the question about a report that was with real estate and then was closed. And then I have a question about, I'm not sure if it's the same complaint, but there was one about mailboxes that was closed. And then there was another one that was sent down and was illegal in real estate. Do either one of those complaints concern an Ernie Schmidt? Ernie Schmidt filed a complaint with DCP like probably last September.
Right, so we can't discuss the open complaints here.
Right, so is it still an open complaint? Can you tell me that?
Well, it's with legal, according to Janita. So maybe Ryan can tell us what's going on there.
If it's an open complaint, I certainly can't give you any further information. Moreover, as I am a poor substitute for Cynthia, I actually don't have any information I could share with you, but certainly can have Cynthia follow up if there's anything that can be shared at this time.
I'd just like to know the status of the complaint, open, closed. Ernie Schmidt.
I can check in our e-license system now, and I can probably give you that information. Is there a file number associated with that?
I'm sorry, I provided it in an earlier meeting. I tried to reach him this morning before the meeting. I didn't get an answer. I don't know the number for today's meeting. I've provided it in the past.
Do you look it up?
Pamela or Janita, do you have the number?
I don't have the number offhand. It would have been on the close report. If it closed, I do believe it's still open, but I will double check in our system to see if it's still there.
If you could let me know. I know you can't talk about it, but if you could let me know if it's still being investigated, I'd appreciate it. It's in the same park as the one with the mailbox issue, I believe.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the Candlewood Home Park thing.
I don't think so. Is that
Okay.
Candlewood?
Candlewood is the one that was opened by mistake, referred by mistake, and is now with
Okay,
legal.
I'm wrong then. I take that back. I thought it was the one in Clinton.
Yes, it is still
Oh,
open. I
yes.
can say that it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
Okay.
complaint is open. Mr. Smith's
Okay.
complaint is
The-
open, yes.
the
It is
Schmidt- the Schmidt-
within our legal division,
The Schmidt complaint.
Could I,
correct.
could
Okay.
could I ask a question, a related question about open complaints? Is when you have an open complaint, will the department share information with the complainant? Or was the complainant also precluded from getting information about their own complaint?
So the complaint depends on what information is being disclosed. So if in the preparation of a case for a hearing and for testimony, we need to bring that complainant in to discuss their testimony. Some information may be disclosed in that situation. We may give kind of very superficial status updates, but generally, no, we will not give any details on case status to a complainant.
So if a complainant were to call up and say, it's been 4 months since I filed the complaint, what's going on with my complaint? Would your answer, and let's assume that it's still an open case, would your answer be, I'm sorry, I can't tell you? Or would it be, well, we've sent a notice out to the park owner and we're still waiting for a response? Or what information does the complainant himself able to get? Because
I think it depends on the situation, but typically, if like, for example, if that call came into legal and if it was in investigations, the information would be that investigation is still open and it's with the investigations division. If anything's found, it'll be up to legal. So again, I can only speak for the legal division, but we would mostly restrict it to at what division, at what point in the process it is, but we wouldn't go into the details of, we're waiting for a response back from the respondent who's been sent a 14-day letter. Usually we don't get into those details. No.
So what would happen if the park owner calls up and says, I know there was a complaint filed against me, but I haven't heard anything from the department for the last couple of months. What's going on with that complaint? Were there actually a party? Would you,
Well, I'm not
how much
sure.
information would you give the park owner?
I'm not sure I understand that situation, because the first thing that'll happen if a complaint's filed is they'll receive a notice and an invitation to engage with the department about the complaint and provide their side of the story. Then there may be outreach to other parties or other, witnesses in the case. And again, I'll defer to Pam and to Janita on the investigatory
You're on
side.
target. You're on target. That's exactly what happened. So our
Right.
investigations, again, the case becomes DCP. We're not representing the individual. We're looking at whatever our jurisdictional authority is to investigate. We interview complainants, witnesses. We may have to talk to other entities such as, local authorities, health department. So no, we don't give them step-by-step of what's going on in the case, because we would then lose some integrity. We've had cases where someone would call up and then call the respondent, hey, DCP is coming after you, they're going to do this to you. So we know to share what we can, and we are communicating with complainants. We do have an online system where they can go in and set up an account. So if there's communication has occurred, they get a blast through their email to see that there's some recent activity, if it's been assigned to a different department, but a different division, excuse me. We're not going to share every detail of our case, because we have to keep the integrity of the investigation.
Right. And at that point, I'll just, if I may, just kind of finish up that thought. So then if it comes to legal, but the distinction between a respondent and a complainant or any other individual that's asking for information from the case is the ability for us to resolve the case relies with the respondent. If they're coming, they receive the complaint and they want to come to us and say, yes, all of the allegations are true, I would like to resolve it. Obviously, we're going to engage with them in the process. Moreover, once investigations completes their report, if a violation is found and it comes to legal, our first contact is going to be with the respondent, because that is the negotiations process. And certainly the confidentiality of that negotiations process is essential. up until the point that an agreement is reached and we would disclose it publicly. So at least when it comes to legal's interaction with respondents, they are treated very differently because they are a party to the case.
So maybe I'm not sure if you may have answered my question, but I'm not quite sure. So that if the respondent says, well, who's been complaining, they would know the name of the complainant, presumably. They wouldn't know off the top, like, for example, if you would talk to other residents in the park or anything like that. So if they said to you, well, you've been doing an investigation, have you verified this by talking to other people in the park? Who else have you talked to? Would you disclose that information to them, or would you tell them that that's confidential, even though they're the complainant, even though they're the respondent? Is that information available to them?
It depends. I will speak from a legal. If the case was in legal, had been already referred up, I would disclose that information only if it was necessary to reach a resolution in the case. I would not disclose the information because the respondent would have a right to it. Rather, if I had that information and I was trying to make the point that I verified the allegations that were made by one individual with 3 others and trying to convey the strength of the case as they were making the decision whether or not to resolve it, that at that time I may choose to disclose that information. But
Okay.
it would not be something that he would have access to as of right up until the point that there was a contested case, and then he would have certain rights to documents under the Uniform Administrative Procedures Act.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that we move on. Appreciate the department being present, and we will be talking about these issues some more, I'm sure. Brian, did you have anything else that you were here to convey for Cynthia, or?
Not at this time, though. Again, if there are questions for legal, I'm happy to answer them to the best of my ability.
I think for the moment we're good, and you're welcome to stay. And Pamela and Janita, I hope Janita's already left. We promised to get her out. You also are welcome, as is your intern. I don't know if the intern has arrived.
Yes, Wesley is present.
Oh, good. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right. So I think we will move on to CHFA's park purchase program report. If there's no, Brian, are you still with us?
I am. Yep.
Apologies for the delay in getting to you.
No
Thanks
problem.
for your patience.
No problem. Colette, who normally Colette and I are both on this call. She speaks to the mobile park acquisition program. She's not on the call today, but she did send an email to everybody yesterday, basically saying she wouldn't be here and that there was no activity on the mobile park acquisition program this past quarter. So with regards to that, I guess there's no update for what she normally provides. With what I typically provide with home ownership, I do have some updated numbers from our partners at Capital for Change. According to their numbers, they have received 3 new purchase applications for the mobile manufactured home program since our last update. That brings the total up to 61 applications in the last 2 years. And one of them did successfully close in the last 3 months. So that brings the successful purchase number up to 12 during that 2-year period. Moving on to our refinance program, again with Capital for Change, they said that they have not received any applications for the refi program since the last update. So that number still stands around 15 applications in the last 2 years. 5 of those have successfully closed during that time. And then the last numerical update I have for you is the My Home CT for foreclosure assistance. There was 1 additional My Home CT application that was filed since the last update, and 3 more, I guess, are in process. Wait, we're in process. Let's see, 38 applications total for My Home CT have been applied for. half of those, 19 have been successfully funded, which is great to see that we've been able to help 19 people. The average dollar amount for those My Home CT assistance grants was $18,768. So that was the average that all 19 of those received. Let's see. It does say here in their notes from Capital for Change that mobile and manufactured homeowners seeking assistance from My Home CT are significantly more likely to request assistance for the non-mortgage assistance or the non-mortgage expenses. Many times I guess they have a mortgage that's paid off, so they're looking for taxes and maybe association fees to be covered by the My Home CT. There are 3 more currently in process applications. 9 were denied or deemed ineligible, and 6 were withdrawn for various reasons. So those are the latest numbers I do have from our partners at Capital for Change.
Thank
I have
you.
a quick question. This is Liz Burdick from Montville.
Sure.
Have any Montville residents applied since our last meeting?
For which one, the purchase or the My Home CT?
Either.
Either. I don't know. They didn't give me a breakdown of geography, but
All
I
right.
can, yeah, I can ask them if you want me
Well, I
to.
had passed along the information to 2 folks
Oh,
since
good.
our
Thank you.
last meeting, and I was just curious. I didn't hear back from them, and
Oh.
I didn't know if it was, I kind of gave them the guidelines and gave them the links, but I just was
Wonderful.
curious as to if any of them had applied. But thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate you spreading the word.
Brian, is
Um,
it possible in the future for us to get a breakdown by location? It may be of some use to either the residents association or the park owners in knowing where there seems to be take up and where there isn't, and might spur some additional um, outreach to people.
Yeah, I can ask the marketing department to work with Capital for Change to see if that would be possible. I'll make a note of that right here. Breakdown by location request. Okay, sure. I'll pass
Yeah,
that
and
along.
ideally by park, right? Yeah,
By
that's-
park. Okay, by park. Park ideally. Okay.
That would be
All right.
helpful. And any
Um,
further insight into the relatively small numbers for such a wonderful program? It's
Yeah.
been around now for 2 years. That's hard to believe.
Yeah, I did. I did ask both the director of Capital for Change and their underwriter who tends to underwrite these programs. And he did say that the 2 hurdles he tends to find the most with regards to the purchase program were debt to income ratio and unfortunately not having the 20% down payment needed for the program. So a lack of savings to have that 20% and also debt to income ratios being exceeded by many applicants, which is too bad.
Do you have a program that can address the down payment issue, can help out?
Right now, our current mobile manufactured home program for the purchase does require
Yeah.
20% down. I don't think there's been much discussion about adjusting that, but I'll see if there's something that can be discussed about that. So something.
And on the
Brian, I have-
refi side, we had also talked about you're lowering was it a 6% threshold for applicants? Current financing at 6% or more.
Yeah, there's been unfortunately, no movement on them changing that qualifier. It is, of course, still at 1%, which is nice. I guess one of the hurdles that they're finding there is, according to the underwriter at Capital for Change, is the loan to value ratios many times for borrowers are exceeded when they apply for that program. So I don't know what the deal is there, if property values have gone down or they're just maybe when they originally purchased it, they found something with a low down payment. But that, according to them, many of their refinance applicants have higher LTVs, loan to value ratio.
Could you ask how many were under the 6%? That would be helpful. to
How
know.
many were under 6%?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we don't know how many don't even apply because they've read the requirements and know they don't make it.
Yep.
But if they've got any
Or-
feedback on that, that would be useful. Again, it's inexplicable. This is free money. And
Agreed.
It's hard to understand why, even if people wind up not qualifying because of the amount of other debt, you would think they'd be beating down the door to reduce their payments. And the fact that they're not is just a puzzlement.
Yeah, I agree.
So
All right,
Brian,
how are your, can I
Is
ask
there
a
any-
question? How are your underwriting guidelines for mobile home parks, specifically, interest rates and amount of down payment required differ from the loans that you offer, to people buying a single family home for the first time, and purchasing the land as well?
The rate is exactly the same. So we offer the same rate on our first mortgages as we do for the mobile manufactured home loan program. We do, though, require a 20% down payment for this program as a purchase, whereas with other single family homes, condos and whatnot, they follow agency guidelines like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and whatnot. Many times you can buy a single family house, primary residence, of course, with 3% down perhaps. So there is a difference there, pretty big difference with that 20% down payment. But the rate is the same.
Is that difference resulting from the secondary market guidelines?
Yes, absolutely.
Brian, aren't you using FHA guidelines?
No,
not
they
using it
don't
for
use
refinancing?
FHA for that. No. No, it's a whole different animal, the mobile and manufactured home program. And I've only been here 10 months, but for years it's been a 20% down payment because it's a whole different product.
okay, Brian, as far as the programs that you have there, is there a chance that somebody, I'm not saying you, but somebody in particular can do like a bullet point thing as far as the programs you have and contact information and that type of thing to the council members?
I'm not sure I understand the request. So you're asking for,
You have programs as far as purchasing a home, the park program, the refinance, the ones you're just going over. So is there any way of getting like the topic type thing with bullet points and contact information to the council members? So in case we run across anybody that's looking for information or assistance, we can basically send them in your direction if we have something to refer them to.
yeah, we have marketing materials and links on our website at chfa.org. That's always a great place to reference your candidates who might be able to qualify for a refinance, let's say with the mobile home program, or be looking to purchase. That's normally where we point to our borrowers to go to the website.
Is there
Well,
some sort of brochure on the website?
Yeah, in the marketing section, there's marketing flyers, absolutely.
Okay, any of that information, can you just send in an email or whatever to the council members so we can use it?
Sure. Yep, absolutely. I'll email everybody on that group that Colette did and put links here to the flyers for the mobile and manufactured home refinance and purchase program. Not a
Okay.
Thank you
problem.
very much. Thank you.
Sure.
Other
Flyers.
questions for Brian? If not, thank you very much. Really appreciate your patience and
Mhm.
your being here. And
My
again,
pleasure.
you're welcome to stay, but we're gonna move on to other topics.
Thank you very much, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, before we lose Rafi, I'd like to move on to the next agenda item, which is a report on the very recently passed park purchase right of refusal bill. Rafi, would you give us your report on that? And also, if you could, just very briefly, the status of any other legislation that would impact mobile homes.
Basically, I don't know the status of any legislation, frankly. The prime that I was involved with was the park purchase legislation. That went through the Senate, I think a week or a little over a week ago, and it went through the House last night. So its next stop is to the governor. The bill number is Senate Bill 988, if anybody wants to look it up. But it was a lot of work went into this in conjunction with with the park owner, with representatives of the park owners, and ultimately the original version, so it's to some extent was scrapped, and a compromise was written that the park owners were willing to essentially sign off on, not necessarily endorse, but sign off on. And that was the version that ultimately passed. So if anyone is trying to trace this down, it's actually not the bill itself, but an amendment that was adopted in the Senate and then ultimately adopted in the House. And its number is, using the codes they use, is LCO. That's for Legislative Commissioner's Office, LCO 8600. And that's basically the bill. And what it does is it provides a timeline similar to other New England states, in which if a park is going to be sold, the park owner provides notice to the residents, and there's a time structure in which the residents have an opportunity for initially they have to organize. They have to have at least 50% of the homeowners part of an association. The transaction has to be with the association. The unit owner cannot propose to buy their own lot, for example. The association has to be proposing to buy the entire park. And it's a sort of a three-step process. First, a timeline for notifying of interest with proof that they have half the unit owners. A second timeline for getting an actual agreement with the park owner through a purchase and sale agreement. And then a third timeline for locking in the financing and closing on the sale. I think the expectation is that once you get to the purchase and sale agreement point, the odds are very good that you're going to end up completing it the rest of the way, because there are entities, particularly ROC, which stands for Resident-Owned Communities, that actively finances resident ownership park purchases nationwide, but particularly in New England, which is where they're based. So the chances at that stage would be very good if an agreement had been worked out. And that's basically, that's the core of the bill. There were a lot of small issues along, I wouldn't say small issues. There were a lot of issues along the way. There was a real effort made to compromise from both sides on those issues so that it would be possible to move the bill forward as something that both the residents wanted and that the park owners were willing to agree to. And that's basically what happened. And I think Dave and I in particular were involved in this from the resident end. Mark Asness was very much involved from the park owner end. So was Mark Berkowitz. And I think the feeling was a good feeling that on an issue that was a difficult issue, that we were able to come together. And while this wasn't done through the advisory council, but the people who were involved were all connected to the advisory council. And 3 of them were members, and the 4th one was me, and that sort of group of 4. So that's where it is. You never take anything for granted, but there's really no particular reason why the governor wouldn't sign the bill, as far as I know. So I would sort of, I think it's fair to assume the bill will take effect. It takes effect in October. And I think that certainly an organization like ROC is interested in helping doing financing in Connecticut. And we always have the issue of whether of trying to get banks involved. CHFA has this program, which in a lot of ways is not as good as the ROC program. In some ways, with the passage of the statute, assuming the governor signs, it might make sense for CHFA to take another look at their own rules to see if they wanted to try and make their program kind of equally attractive to ROC. But I think I certainly came out of this with a positive feeling. I hope that Mark Asness felt that accommodations were made to respond to park owner interests. So that's where it is. It's sort of I think I mean, it's a new development for Connecticut, but it's not new for New England at all. And it seems to have worked pretty well everywhere else. One of the interesting data points that I didn't know before we got involved with this legislation was that in the New England states that have this statute, not necessarily because of the statute, and the 4 other New England states that have a similar kind of statute, between 20 and 30% of mobile home parks in those states are resident owned. In Connecticut, we have 3 resident owned parks, which is roughly 1.5%. So it's a striking difference in the frequency of resident ownership between Connecticut and all the other New England states. And it doesn't change the fact that even in those states, 70 to 80% of parks are not resident owned. It's not like everybody goes and all the parks become resident owned parks. But I mean, it remains predominantly non-resident owned quite heavily throughout New England. But when you look at that difference, you sort of have to say, why is it in Connecticut? Why are we so different from the percentage in neighboring states? The park situation seems to be pretty similar. And so I would expect over time, we'll see an increase in resident-owned parks in Connecticut. I don't know that it's going to happen right away, but I think maybe as years go by, I think we're going to start seeing more residents expressing, when they have the opportunity, expressing interest in obtaining ownership of the park. And it's doable. Between the CHFA program, ROC, and there may be other financiers out there, they're willing to gear their financing and their approach, which typically would include supportive services for the residents on an ongoing basis, which is what ROC does, because obviously residents are not park managers, and for this to be successful, people are assuming an ultimate responsibility through an association for management of the park. So that's where that is. Someone else may know more about the other bills. There were some other things floating around, but this is really the only one that I know anything about.
Thank you, Rafi. Before we get on to any other bills, I would like to hear from Nancy and park owners. Neither Mark is here, but I noticed that Marcia slipped in, and I apologize for not having noticed before. Welcome, Marcia. If any of you have
Good morning, Bennett.
any comments about the bill that was adopted yesterday.
Well, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me, Bennett?
We can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, great. I obviously have been following this. I am a bit concerned and a bit confused since I've been on the advisory council for approximately 26 years, as has Miriam. Why there was not one advisory council not part of this process.
Excuse me, we're getting a lot of background noise.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me turn off the mic.
Thank you. Anyone else, please, that you're not going to talk, would you mute yourself just to? Thanks, Miriam. Marcia, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
So I'm a little confused as to why the advisory council members were not more of a part of the process.
Yeah, again, we've got a lot of background noise. Could people mute if they're not talking, please? I think we heard you, Marcia, but please finish your thought.
Oh my goodness, I don't know what my thought was anymore.
I apologize.
Why the advisory council members were not more part of the process on this. And I do understand that Rafe and Mark and Dave did have extensive time put into this. But I don't understand why all these years on the council that we were never consulted, why we weren't part of the process on it. And I just don't, it certainly is a little discouraging after putting in all that time, all these years, to do that. And,
But thank you. I appreciate those
you know,
comments.
that's my comment at the moment.
Yeah. Miriam, would you want to speak?
I'm just two issues. I mean, I think that as an organization, meaning the advisory council, I think we really need to be a little bit more aware of time management. So our meeting started at 10:30. It's been an hour before we've gotten to what I think are probably the most important topics here on this agenda. And so we have half an hour to kind of discuss things that, you know, as Marcia says, we're appalled. I'm appalled that we haven't, in all these meetings, these things have not been on the forefront of what we're talking about. And instead, nothing gets DCP, or it's not their fault. We're talking about somebody's mailbox and stuff we've kind of go over and over and over every meeting. And, you know, it's very frustrating for us. That being said, I mean, here we have, I'm always going to be against anything that's going to prevent or slow down the potential sale of communities when and where they are needed. This, you know, we talk about it, every sale as being a negative thing, and that residents can offer to buy a park at any given time. They don't need to have this, in my opinion, to be mandated. If my residents wish to purchase the property, great. If they can match the price, wonderful. I mean, I don't think if there's a park owner that would have ever gone against that. A sale is a sale is a sale. And most park owners have a relationship with their residents that they have nurtured over the years and would like nothing better for their residents to have, you know, have a stake in the entire community. But I see huge issues with this. I see the number of folks, investors buying, and I know some of you are going to say that's not a good thing. Investors are not going to be looking at Connecticut as far as purchasing communities. And a lot of these communities need investor money to come in. They're not able to have ROC, you know, take care of things for them. So what happens with those? What happens when our investors start looking at other states that don't have this? You know, we're talking about a small park on Boston Post Road half an hour ago that closed down. Okay. That park never had anyone. I mean, if someone wanted to come in and buy it, I mean, that's been gone. And I find this really frustrating. I understand what I see, what I think will happen. My prediction is you're going to see some parks that really need to sell, and this is going to turn off potential buyers, go to more of a renting situation rather than a home ownership. And that happens when your park gets old and people want to sell. They'll sell to the park owner, who will in turn turn it into a rental, so that at the end of the day, when that park owner does want to sell, they own all the homes. And this is kind of the situation that you just talked about in Orange. I think we're making it more difficult, and we're putting up these big, horrible issues that I don't see as being there. So, and again, I wish we had been asked to discuss this a year ago, 6 months ago, anything, and it really hasn't.
Thank you. Thank you, Miriam. Nancy, did you want to say anything?
I don't really have much to add, Bennett. I think it's a little bit overstated that it was agreed to by both parties. I'm not so sure that Mark would characterize it as such. I haven't had a chance to debrief with him personally, but in the conversations as they went along, I don't feel that the bill represents the way the park owners feel.
Dave, you were part of this discussion. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, you know, first of all, the council meets once a quarter. The session begins in January. at the last council meeting, we were chastised for not bringing the bill up to the advisory council beforehand. And at that time, I pointed out that there was a survey that was done, I think back in December, one of the for priorities for the council, and the bottom rated one was trying to get moving on some sort of park purchase program. And with that, we decided to move forward with it. We were again duly chastised in the spring meeting for this, and acknowledged that we would try not to do this again, without input, but I would maintain that there was input still. And at that point, we had to proceed with the people that stepped forward to negotiate on behalf of park owners, and we dealt with Mark, and you guys. I mean, don't you guys have monthly meetings? I'm understanding that the Park Owners Association has monthly meetings, and if we can only go by what the people that were there in front of us, and now the bill has proceeded for 6 months. There's been one advisory council meeting in the interim, and now we've gotten to the end. We couldn't predict how it was going to go. We didn't know what was going to happen until yesterday. So that's and I think honestly, some people think that there's going to be horrible outcomes for residents. Some people think there's going to be horrible outcomes for owners. As was mentioned earlier, under the rosy scenario for resident ownership, 20 to 30% of parks might, over a period of years, wind up by being resident controlled. And some of those parks are in jurisdictions where at least one of you I know has been operating for a long time. So, has it resulted in those disasters in those jurisdictions? You'd have to prove that to me. But anyways, I always want to see how it goes. We didn't get everything that we wanted. Obviously, it doesn't sound like you got everything that you wanted. I think we should just let it play out and see how it works.
Dave,
Al,
what
did
was it you would have wanted more, may I ask?
What we would have wanted more?
Yeah, what was that you just said we didn't get everything we
Look
wanted?
in the exemptions, Miriam. There's things in there that we didn't want. We gave in on a couple of those things. I have to go back and look at it myself because I moved on. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm not running the
If I
meeting.
could interject one question to you. It's not so much that it's us as park owners. I am a park owner, family business, 65 years. I think what was upsetting was that I have spent 26 years on this advisory council. And so have several other people that I can see, and that this never was brought up. It wasn't a consultant thing. It's not a park owner, park tenant thing. It's me as an advisory council member. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to step in here. Rafi, did you have just a quick response to the question?
Well, there's sort of two pieces. One is, I think that at our last meeting, it was sort of agreed that the process, it was agreed that the process should have been more through the advisory council. So I think, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think people said that maybe we learned something about what happens when it doesn't go that way. But I thought that under the circumstances, we were doing what was actually through the advisory council. It wasn't literally through it at that point. And the timeline is such because the way in which legislation moves, you have to be doing things constantly. So in effect, what you had was the Residents Association representative and the Park Owners Association representatives meeting directly. And so it's true that it wasn't through the advisory council, but it was, at least I thought, through the key people who were on the advisory council. And I think, I don't think, I'm certainly not disagreeing with anything that you're saying in regard to the future. I mean, I think that it took the direction it took because it felt like there was going to be no way that there would ever be an acceptable compromise. And it turned out that was wrong, that there did turn out to be those ways. In terms of the actual, what might have made it a compromise, or why might it have been that the representatives of the park owners were willing to say, okay, we can live with this. The park owners are being paid 1.25% to sell to residents rather than to somebody else, because there's a waiver for them of the state conveyance fee. The timeline was radically shortened as a result of negotiations, so that it's the amount of time that a transaction would be delayed if the residents are not going to be buying is way shorter in this version than where the bill was when it started. At the time of the public hearing, all you had was the original bill. Those kinds of changes were made. Adaptations were made for what I would call complex transactions, because the concept of the bill was a match. There's some things that residents can match. There's some things that residents can't match. For example, if you're selling 5 parks, the residents aren't going to buy 5 parks. So there's language in the bill to try and address how it works in that situation. If you're buying with stock rather than with cash, and there were things that were there were adaptations that were made that put park residents in a worse position for being able to match than say in Massachusetts, where they've addressed some of those issues specifically, and rather than kind of leaving them as it were here in something that will most likely turn out to be a non-match situation. So those were the kinds of accommodations. These were substantive accommodations that were made, and they were made in response to issues that were discussed with the representatives of the two groups. So that if you think that this is, if you go back and compare the original bill that went to public hearing with the bill that ultimately passed, you'll see a lot of similarities. But if you look carefully, you're going to see a lot of differences. And those differences were almost all made in order to accommodate concerns that were raised by the park owners. And it certainly felt, I guess you're right in saying that once this did not get started through the council, there were no pre-discussions of it through the council. And I think that's a legitimate criticism of the process from our end. And we acknowledge, and that was acknowledged at the last meeting. But I really felt like the actual negotiations, which were on like a week-to-week, almost day-to-day basis. I mean, there's no way the council, other than through a committee, could have possibly done that. I thought de facto that was a committee of the council. And I understand that it wasn't. I mean, technically it wasn't, but I don't know how different it would have been if we'd said to the council, appoint the committee members that you want to have work on this together. I think those are the committee members you would have appointed.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I thought a real effort was made to accommodate the fact that we were now in process and the council was getting itself back involved again. And I think the lesson is that for next time, even on issues that are like 180 degrees apart on the position, people will come to the council first with it before they go off on their own.
Well, I'd like to pick up on that point, because I do appreciate very much the perspective of the park owners with regard to the process. And while at the end of the day, it does seem like this was a truly good faith negotiation on both sides, substantively, that doesn't change what what happened in terms of the process within the council, and I think it does represent a serious danger to the council, which is already quite fragile, I think, in its ability to function effectively. And I think that this alienation of a major constituency is something that really can't be allowed to happen again. I proposed, and I'd like to do it here formally, that we adopt a protocol as a council that no one will undertake legislative action affecting mobile homes without bringing the issue to the attention of the council first. I know that no such protocol is binding, but I think the future of the council very much depends upon our being able to all embrace that concept that we can't do our job effectively together if we can't trust each other to share stuff that impacts everybody. And so I'm putting that out there for discussion and ultimately a vote. We have a quorum. I'd like to have it on the record. So
I don't have any problem with that. I acknowledge my role in getting this ball rolling. We had reservations about how to handle it, and ultimately decided that because of the results of that survey, that we weren't going to get a consensus through the advisory council. Anyway, that was probably a misjudgment on my part. The only caveat I would say to agreeing to this kind of protocol is, and I know some people aren't going to like to hear this, but I don't want to be hamstrung if another situation develops like a tree falling on somebody's house with them in it, and I want to try to address it legislatively, real time. Other than that, I totally agree with the protocol.
why would that prevent you from sending an email?
I thought it was it wouldn't. I misunderstood. I thought it would prevent me from
Sending an email to the
introducing
council saying that there's an emergency situation and I need to take action on it. And
Okay.
I want to inform the council and let's call a special meeting.
You're right. You're right. There is no
We
reason.
can do that in 24 hours.
You're right. That's that wouldn't prevent me from doing that. You're right.
Just so I'm clear, I'm not
caveat.
proposing that the council gets to veto anybody's desire to support legislation. At the end of the day, people and constituencies are going to do what they do, but I think the process matters. That's all I want to enshrine.
All right. I withdraw the caveat. You're right.
I'd like to hear from others. Al, you haven't had a chance to speak yet.
Just been listening. So basically, we're all gonna agree that we're willing to talk about different issues when they come up and go from there as far as what needs to be done, whether it favors one side or the other. You know, I can understand talking to everybody and trying to get their opinions.
Yeah, I should just, for Liz maybe, who's the only new member here, we have a long history of having done that, and often as an accommodation. You know, we did the abandonment bill at the request of the park owners, and we worked hard on that. We worked endlessly with Jensen's over their desire to craft a bill for long-term leases. We didn't get anywhere and they ultimately withdrew the request, but we sat at the table because it mattered to them. And that's, I think, all I'm asking. Somebody needs to mute, please.
Yeah. So I don't think that was me. I just want to throw in, Bennett, thank you for mentioning me, that my understanding is you want the council right now to agree that no legislation will be proposed without council discussion. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I would say, even if it's proposed by others and we want to jump on it and engage with it. I think it's a judgment call as to when somebody else's legislation becomes an issue. I think there's an obligation on the part of all of us to share with the council any legislation we know about that affects mobile home. We don't operate by stealth, right? So
Yeah, I agree.
whether it rises to the level of we got to sit down and hammer this out together, or it's not our bill, it's somebody else's, we had nothing to do with it. So that was my intent, Liz. I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No, no, I think I understood it correctly, and I'm in favor of that sort of motion that you just made.
Thank you. Miriam, Marcia, Nancy.
Bennett, if I'm
I pass.
unmuted, I just want to reiterate this, that comes from the state statute, that the advisory council shall monitor the implementation of statutes and regulations affecting mobile manufactured homes and to promote mobile manufactured homes. I mean, those were like the two basic things the advisory council does. I agree with your protocol. I think that certainly goes a long way for maybe in the future preventing this from happening again. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Miriam.
I'll pass. Thanks.
Please
Nothing.
don't.
It's all right.
I can't address all of your disappointments with the council, but I
Okay.
think this one is within our control, don't you?
Sure, there's nothing, I have no problems with what you're suggesting, of course, going forward. Why would anyone? We'll see.
Nancy?
I'd agree.
All right, I'm going to take that as a unanimous vote in support of the resolution that members of the council who are aware of legislation that affects mobile homes will inform the council, and any member of the council who is actively working on such legislation would give the council an opportunity to discuss it. That's all. No veto, just discuss.
Agreed.
Any objections or abstentions? Oh, Ben, I'm sorry. God, how did I miss you? Where are you? You still with us? You are. I'm sorry.
here.
And Jennifer, yeah. Sorry. Ben, go ahead.
No, I agree with you.
Jennifer?
I agree.
Did I miss anyone else? Forgive me. No. Okay. We have unanimous agreement, and I hope that we will. We can have the conversation now, but I think we have to have it in September. We get the 2 marks here. We've really got to talk about what we can now do together to promote mobile homes and perhaps bring us a little back closer together than we are right now. Yeah, I do hope that we can get back on track. We had a bunch of ideas that we wanted to implement, including House on the Hill, Home on the Hill, and a promotion campaign. And I think those are the right things to do. And let's see if with this behind us, we can find common ground again.
On the idea of promoting mobile home parks, there's a development since our last meeting. Some kind of builder of mobile or modular homes is moving from Brooklyn into the greater New Haven area. I kind of viewed that as a positive development for Connecticut. Do the owners know anything about this group, this company?
I believe that's excuse me, I believe that's manufacturing of prefab modulars, you can say, products that's going to be shipped out, not necessarily for Connecticut. Maybe manufactured here, but I think it's being shipped out.
If it's the same one, Ben, I read that they're definitely moving their office operations. But
yeah.
I thought they were moving manufacturing to down there because of the railroad and shipping connection.
That's correct.
Well, it's.
But it
all
sounds like
there.
it's a different product, Dave.
You might be right,
Okay.
Miriam. I just was one. I wasn't sure. But we're trying to promote them as trying to get people to think of them more as modular homes anyway. And I just thought it was a positive development.
Yeah, I think anything in that direction ultimately helps us, but remains to be seen what impact having the office here will have. Maybe there'll be a player at the legislature in promoting more affordable housing. I certainly, for what it's worth, and please don't laugh, I'm on the Town of Madison Affordable Housing Committee. And that's not an oxymoron. My hope is that we'll be able to make some inroads in the zoning regulations that basically prohibit anything other than a 5,000 square foot single family house on 10 acres. But we're working on it, and I want to promote everywhere we can modular and mobile modular homes. For infill housing as well, and accessory unit housings, and a variety of possible applications.
Tell them they should do what Washington just did.
Say again?
State of Washington.
Yeah.
That's
One
it.
last.
I've got to
item on-
head out. Goodbye, guys.
Say again?
She left.
Anybody? I'm sorry, I couldn't tell who was talking.
I think Miriam just left.
Okay, well, I have one more item that I hope won't take up a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
have to,
time.
I have to leave. I have another meeting coming up, so are we getting pretty close?
We are close. I just want to,
Okay.
I want to raise one issue. If we can resolve it, fine. If not, we'll kick it over again to September. God, several meetings ago, I delegated myself to meet with the department about getting more useful information on complaints. And the department, and Liz, this is again mostly for your benefit, the department has absolutely refused under this regime to give us any useful information about complaints that are pending. Sometimes pending for years, as I think you've seen. My position is that part of our job here depends on our knowing what's going on out in the field. And that if they can't share with us what's happening substantively, then we're not really in a position to do our job. And they don't seem to care about that. And so I have gotten an agreement that they will entertain from us a proposal to give us substantive information about the nature of the complaints without any identifying information. So what we get now is worthless. The open complaint list merely gives us the category that says dispute between resident and owner, which is meaningless. They're willing to have us come up with some more substantive categories where they can say, among the open complaints this quarter, we have, two complaints about potholes. We have one about allegedly illegal lease provision, and one about I don't know what, not allowing choice of vendors, something like that. So we would at least be able to monitor what the topics are. And I would also ask them if there are, again, without revealing where, if there are multiple complaints coming from, if there are multiple complaints on the same issue, are they coming from the same park or are they more broadly distributed across all the parks? So we, again, have a sense of how serious an issue this is. There have been critical emerging issues that the departments had, I'm sorry, that the councils had a major role in resolving. I think of underground oil tanks, for example, and park owners' responsibility for underground utilities and that sort of thing, where our guidance has been sought and taken and issues have gotten resolved. Yeah, so that's the proposal. And I wanted to get some reaction, and if people are on board, then I'll work on trying to put together some bullet points on what the topics might be and circulate those for feedback, and then pursue it with the council. So
What's the, okay, so obviously the things that are most important would be health and safety related issues. But I, you know, if without a fairly inclusive description of in the response of what the issue is, again, it's without being able to identify the parties, how would we, I don't know, you have to explain to me how this is going to improve the situation.
well, they're not going to give us the parties. That's
Right.
the problem, Dave. And
Right.
you know, because you and others tried to move a bill that would have required them to give us information.
Yeah.
And true to their word, they killed it right away. And
Yep.
they will continue to kill it right away. And, you know, you can try all the legislation you want, but until we have a change at the top, I don't think you're going to get anywhere. So this is not a substitute for what you'd like to have and what I'd like to have. This is, given that we're not going to get what we want, is there value to us in knowing substantively what kinds of issues are surfacing around the state, and offering our advice, solicited or otherwise, to the enforcement people about what to do with it.
Well, yeah, baby steps, I guess. I don't have any problem moving forward with what you're talking about and viewing it as a step in the right direction. But you know, I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally inadequate, and this would not be a waiver of our continuing request to be treated like an advisory council so we could do our job, but that's not going to happen. And so I'm resolved to do the best I can if that's okay with the group.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm good with it.
And anyone want to speak
I
against
see.
it? Al, are you okay, at least if I develop a draft and circulate it within the council?
Yeah.
Jennifer?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, anyone else, Ben? Any
Fine.
objection? Ben, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
And let me just add one thing. What you're going through is very similar as what the Real Estate Commission has to. Regarding information that we want. This is where we try to compile information or cases that are consistent of a problem in a certain thing where we can address. And it's the same, and they will not give us that information unless, if the case is still open. And that's been a problem. I've been on a commission now for 24 years, and that's the way it's been.
yeah, I understand.
You know, anytime we get involved, we're happening involved, if, for an example, a case is not moving and it's stalled, then that person who makes the complaint will probably contact one of us, will contact me. I'm working on it now. Why? Well, normally there's a reason why it's stalled. And it's easy to put it on the back burner, but if no one ever takes it off the back burner and look at it again, guess what? It's there forever.
Yeah, well, we've seen examples of that, haven't we?
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, the department has articulated reasons which don't make sense to me. And I think could easily be gotten around if there were a willingness, but this is the best I've been able to get out of them, and not even a commitment to do this, mind you, merely to entertain our proposal. So I think we got to take them up on it and see whether in good faith they're willing to deal with us. So I will circulate well before the September meeting. I apologize. It's not anymore the September meeting. It's the August 31st meeting. And I would encourage you all, please, regardless of your vacation plans, call in if you can. I think this will be an important meeting. And I apologize for the change.
No worries, we'll do. Thank you.
All right, folks, I apologize we went so long, and thank you for your patience. Stay healthy, avoid the
Motion to
toxic
adjourn.
smoke.
Second.
Marcia, did you have anything you wanted to say before we adjourned?
Just the motion to adjourn, Bennett. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Second.
And Liz, thanks for hanging in there.
Yep,
So
I gotta
long,
run, guys.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you
All right.
all.
Bye, Liz.
All right, Jen, we are
Marcia.
adjourned, Jen. You can so mark it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a good day and enjoy
Thank
your
you.
summer. Bye.
And you.